Sego, Sewa Guego. Hi, everyone, and welcome to our first annual STOODIS Science Indigenous Scientist Chats. My name is Jenna Barnhart, and I am the Indigenous Research Assistant for STOODIS Science. If this is your first time hearing about us, we are a subsidiary initiative launched out of Ryerson University Sci Exchange program in 2019. Our objective has been to promote science outreach, science knowledge mobilization, and knowledge translation combined with traditional Indigenous teachings to Indigenous students. Throughout the years, myself and the Indigenous Knowledge and Outreach Coordinator, Amber Sandy, have been working really hard to offer science outreach programming specifically to Indigenous youth. So if you're interested in hearing more about our past and future programming, you can find us on all social media platforms under SciExchangeRU or at our website, www.ryerson.ca/SciExchange/Indigenous Outreach. So for today's program, we have graciously been able to partner with our friends at Let's Talk Science to welcome our speaker, Joseph Pitawanakwat, to talk to us today about traditional Indigenous medicines and their teachings. So Joseph is Ojibwe from Wakamakwan, Ontario, and he's the founder and director of Creators Garden, an Indigenous outreach, outdoor education based initiative that's focused on plant identification, environmental sustainability, and traditional Indigenous teachings. So without further ado, welcome, Joe.
Woohoo! Right on. Yeah, let's talk science. I remember long time ago, probably like 8 years ago. No, my wife was pregnant. Maybe almost 8 years ago. Yeah, this summer. That group, Let's Talk Science, actually came and hung out with me for like a week, right in Wiki. It was real awesome. And then I just saw it on the registration. I was like, oh, let's talk science to get to hang out again. Still supporting. um, but yeah. Okay, sweet. Okay, I want to get going right away. I'm actually like super, super chill. Holy man. I was debating all day. The first we usually fast the first 3 days of every month, and so today is the day that we get to break our fast, 72-hour fast. And then I was like, oh, I should just do it after. I should just do it after I work then. But I make a bone broth to break my fast with, and I had that lamb bone broth cooking since yesterday, and so I just been smelling it the whole time. Oh man, then I can't even help it. And then my friend, he brought over sucker heads because he was out fishing. So then I got sucker heads, and then I started that soup. And then I was smelling that soup just getting started. Oh man. And so I was like, okay, I'll just eat a little bit before my presentation. Everything will be okay. And then I could just feel like the real chill, the chillness kicking off or kicking in. But yeah, I mean, I got lots of real cool stuff I wanted to share with everybody today. Um, so I guess we could start maybe right here. Okay, so I wanted to share just like um not introductory, but I wanted to give you guys a really good idea as to what Schnabelmschkicke kind of looks like, the way we would engage historically with plant-based medicine, and yeah, just just kind of introduce us to that idea. So there's a couple different ways that I want to be able to expose you to all the different levels that we would expose ourselves to plant-based medicine, and one thing that's becoming more and more clear the more research that I do is that um, that I don't think we really use that much medicine, really. I think it is our lifestyle that really was responsible for preventing the need for medicine. But there was a knowledge though that medicine knowledge is something that's absolutely, it's a gift that we have, and that's the way that we guard it, or that's the way that we keep it, and that's the reason why we have to know it. What we're really really good at is knowing medicine to use when it comes to infections and injury, and we do that very very well. That was the primary knowledge that was transferred trans given to younger generations of indigenous people all over the world. Of course, infections and injury being, if you fall out of a tree getting coconuts, you're going to want to be able to use some medicine to get yourself healthy as fast as possible. Well, we used to have real big nuts in Ontario. It was a kind of chestnut tree. I should have worded that a little different. But we used to have this chestnut tree that had nuts the size of apples, like huge. In the 20s, it went extinct. Some virus from Japan came here and wiped it all out in like 2 years. So there's none anymore. But like we used to have real massive apple sized chestnuts. And but yeah, I mean, we used to get hurt, I guess, climbing around. And then we needed medicine to be able to heal ourselves. And like I said, this is true for like every indigenous culture across the planet. But for a reason, Nishnaba and Nishnaba Adzuin, or even more specifically, Nishnaba Mshkiki Adzuin, is so important and was always considered to be very important, so that because it was a gift that we had. It was a gift that our land has, and it was a knowledge that we were instructed to retain, and we've effectively shared that with the rest of the world. I mean, like, one really cool idea, my favorite idea, is that like every pharmaceutical drug that has ever been discovered comes from plants. And whenever we hear that, we think of like the Amazon, or we think of Ayurvedic medicine or traditional Chinese medicine, European medicine, or whatever. But the reality is that most of those drugs that have been discovered come from plants that are from the Great Lakes region. So they come from right here. They come from Nishnabek. And so even to a certain degree, we can understand that gift that we've given the rest of the world, that medicine gift. And so we've always kept medicinal knowledge really close to us. So even in Anishinaabe practice, or the way that we live our lives, is like we reject any level of permanence. Like even the structures that we live in, like wigwams, optogams, living in very small communities, and living off of fresh animals for the most part for our entire lives. And so like never fermenting, never having a garden, because all of these things include or involve an element of permanence. Like you're going to have to stay in one spot for a certain amount of time, and we didn't want to do that. We wanted to be in the forest, constantly surrounded by all of this medicinal knowledge, and constantly reiterating and understanding the stories that all of these plants are telling us, and giving those stories to our kids, so that this knowledge is passed on, because it's a gift that we have. It's a gift that our land has, and ultimately ended up being a gift that we shared with the rest of the world. So when you're looking at all of the drugs that have been discovered, it's like Western medicine, not entirely, but as far as prescriptions go, most of that knowledge came from a partnership between Anishinaabe Adzuin and science, to be able to come together and form the pharmaceutical industry as we know it today. And so a lot of research is still being spent on understanding plants of the Great Lakes region, as opposed to other plants from around the world. And one of the reasons why is because the medicine that we have here is really simple. um, Simple in that there's no like guards, there's no sort of toxins, there's no alkaloids that are in the way of preventing you from accessing the medicine. In other parts of the world, in Europe and in the jungle, what happens is the medicine that they have has a guard, a protection that you have to remove, or you have to be able to find a way to extract only the medicinal potential of that plant and then concentrate it. And so involving a really intense, highly scientific, rigorous process to be able to access medicine, hence the induction or inclusion of a hierarchy of, of society. If you wanted to access medicine, you had to go to people who understood medicine, because the extraction process of medicine in the jungle and in Australia and in parts of Northern Europe, like it was a really extensive extraction process. So that knowledge was really great, and you needed to have people that were dedicated to it for their entire lives. But in the Great Lakes region, with our plants having the medicine just right there, and we kind of just, like, for the most part, make tea and drink that tea. um with, our medicine don't have that guard, and so because of that, then everyone is their own physician. My grandma, who was our main source of motivation and inspiration, actually, like, she was her own physician. She knew all of her medicine because that's just what you grew up hearing. And that this medicine is good for this part of your body, this is good for that part, this will help fix problems in here and in here and in here and in here. And there was like, well, how do you do it? How do you get that medicine? You just make tea. So it is really easy. And so Anishinaabe culture and way of life was that we were always our own physician. And like, it's kind of like really cool because my daughter's 7, and my grandma did most of this work with her mom by the time she was like 13, 14 years old. She already had all of the medicinal knowledge that she passed on to me. She already had it at that point. So before she was even like of age, I guess, then she was already her own physician. So that's pretty awesome, pretty incredible. And I'm really excited at the opportunity to be able to share that with my daughter. So, by the time she's like 12, 13, 14 years old, she will already be qualified enough to become her own physician. I mean, I'm not saying that there's no need for a hospital. I'm saying uh that I mean, I try to be not so negative about it that way, but our medicine has something really amazing to offer, and I'm really excited to be able to share with her and everybody today that ability. And so, yeah, just understanding that really amazing gift that we have, that was technically seldom engaged with in a therapy or in a treatment type setting. We had medicine people who were dedicated to medicine. The main reason why they were referred to as medicine people is because they had a unique ability to diagnose, and so that's what qualifies them to become medicine people. But for the most part, everyone was their own physician. So that knowledge was incredibly common from from Potawatomi communities in the south of the Great Lakes region, all the way up into even Cree communities into the far north. But this Great Lakes region is really special in the medicinal potential that it has and that it provided the whole world. And then even really cool on the Great Lakes region, we have a really special place called Manitoulin Island, Nidom Nising. And on that island is a concentration of all of the medicinal potential that occurs in the entire georegion of the Great Lakes, all concentrated onto Manitoulin Island. So on this island, you could get all of the medicine that you want. And it's really fun driving around. I mean, uh, post pandemic, I guess it would be really neat to be able to drive around Manitoulin, because you'll go for a ride to the grocery store, and then you pass through old prairie, you pass through a grasslands meadow, you go through a sphagnum bog, a mossless fen, sand dunes, and alvars, and like you pass through all these ecosystems. Oh, and then you get to the grocery store, you get your food and go home. but like holy man, like rich wooded areas, mixed deciduous stands, like everywhere you could pass by 15 different ecosystems going from like Takumata and Chiging. Like it's insane. and and so that diversity is really obvious when you're cruising around on Manitoulin. And so on this island, yeah, you get every medicine that you can possibly get in this entire medicinal georegion. So that's really convenient. And that's where I lived. That's where I grew up. Anyways, I've been living in Peterborough for like 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. Uh-oh. Couple years anyway. My daughter was small. Now she's 7. But yeah, you get all that medicinal potential in my home. On top of that, there's even 17 wildflowers that grow on Manitoulin that don't grow anywhere else on the planet. One of those flowers blooms once every like 10 years. People come from all over the world to go see that to be able to observe that diversity. And every time you see a tilly hat on Manitoulin, it's always a herbalist. I did that one year. Doesn't matter where we were going, I'd always stop. Hey, who are you? I can't even speak English. You got plants, herbs, trying to say plant in every type of language I can. And then they're like, yeah. It's real fun. Um, then the community that I'm from is Wikwamkong. Like Jenna mentioned in the intro, the Wikwamkong is a really special place, kind of seen as um, I don't want to say one of the last, but one of the biggest cultural hubs and language centers of Anishinaabe nation, I guess. A lot of people know their medicine there still. A lot of people are, I think, one of the greatest, per capita speakers of Indigenous people in at least the southern parts of Ontario, anyways. So it's got some pretty legit cultural cred. And that ends up being like where I'm from. This is my home. And then my grandma was like, well, all of our medicine people really just started just dropping like it was really horrible for quite a few years, losing most of them. And then kind of realizing I was in school for classical guitar. And then I was like, man, one of my grandmas, like one of the last people that I know have a really incredible repertoire of medicinal plant knowledge. So we started spending time with her probably about 11 years ago now. And so like even right down to my family. So looking at the whole georegion that we grew up in, going right into Manitoulin, going right to Wacomakong, and then going right to my grandma, her little house in Salt Bay. Like and then that was my family. So I'm like really privileged in my ability to learn and understand um, uh, medicinal knowledge. But then even so, my mom is a registered nurse, and so but like I always tell everybody, not like any registered nurse, because most nurses are sort of bred and grown up to be able to argue with doctors all day long. That's their job. Uh, tell doctors what to do. And so my mom though was always like continuing her education, always trying to learn as much as she could about everything as possible, or as much as possible, and even ended up going back to school when I was in high school, I think, to learn more about tissues. Um, and so she went for massage therapy, and and then even there, still correcting all the profs, like, hey, I don't know, what about this? And so my mom, being like really incredible in her scientific knowledge, was able to really ignite that in me, and sort of encourage me to be able to be responsible for understanding the science of how medicine works, because started giving it away to people and wiki, like picking it, giving it to people, and like watching what happens. It was like super cool. Started just giving medicine away like Oprah. Everyone was getting all different teas, and it was like incredibly successful. Then the community started approaching me and encouraging me to hold workshops and teach about it. But I was like, oh, I don't really know. And then kind of at the same time, my mom was like, you should learn what you're doing first. You don't even know what you're doing. Like, what are you gonna do if they're on warfarin or Coumadin or metformin or on blood pressure medication, like, or blood water pills? Like, what are you gonna do if they're on medication? And then you might hurt somebody. So I was like, oh, I just got to learn what these plants are doing, then I'd be able to answer that question. And so she kind of sparked this research inside of me. And then and so there was that reinforcement of uh um like a scientific interpretation of the physiological effect of plants that I really started to gain and sort of use that in my research to be able to teach and to be able to get us all to a really well placed in understanding what plant medicine does inside of your body, so we could identify contraindication with Western medication as well, but mainly just so we can understand like, hey man, this plant medicine's legit. Like so those are kind of some of the things that I wanted to be able to share with you today. So like the first one, where is it? I don't even know. I think it's right here. Oh yeah, right here. Okay, so the first one, super easy, super simple. I kind of want to do this in tiers. And so in that first tier, I want us to be able to understand that there was medicine that we engaged with like on an everyday basis. Like it was always on the stove all year, no matter what, for your entire life. And this was, you drank it like water, or I guess the way that we drink coffee now. Like anytime somebody comes over, oh, you want coffee? You want this? You want so this is kind of the way that we would see the Labrador tea is Skigabuk. Skigabuk is Rhododendron groenlandicum, formerly Ledum groenlandicum. And this is one of those medicines that was always on our stove 365 days a year for our entire lives, right from the beginning right until the end. The only exception was pregnancy. um, and so yeah, well, I'll share to you a little bit about this one. It's really amazing because it's kind of like probably one of the most powerful things I could possibly teach everybody today is when you're looking at most chronic disease, um, is driven by insulin resistance. If we like, it is chronic disease that will eventually kill us one day. Like especially cardiovascular disease is the number one killer, Canada and the U.S. and in Indigenous communities. And so, if we want to do something about that, we have to look at what causes cardiovascular disease, and what causes it is metabolic dysfunction, namely insulin resistance. And so the whole diabetes cascade, or really the insulin resistance cascade, hyperinsulinemia, hyperglycemia, all of these things really push um, all of these things really drive cardiovascular disease, and like almost every other chronic disease that you can imagine is at some point driven by hyperinsulinemia. Like I even had one guy who was like, I got chronic sinusitis. Yeah, chronic sinusitis. My nose is always dripping like I'm sick, and I don't have congestive heart failure. And I was like, well, you know, that's what this is. It's caused by too much insulin. So these are huge issues. If we want to be happy and healthy and live the way that our well, I want to say ancestors, but like grandparents lived, like into their 90s. Like think of your great grandparents. The chances of them being 90 years old and still being able to wreck anybody in a bar, like a strong, healthy 90 or centenarian over 100 years old. We were still moose hunting. We were still setting nets. We were still uh, going and collecting sap. Also, we were still filling up our root cellar. We were still doing all of this work into our 90s because we kept our strength into our 90s. That's one of the telltale signs of Insulin resistance is weakness as you age. And so if we want to age and prevent the onset of chronic disease as late into our lives as possible, we need to be insulin sensitive, no matter what. And That's what this medicine really helps with. Insulin resistance begins in the muscles. Whereas whenever we eat, any food that we eat, especially carbohydrates and sugars, is will have a spike in blood sugar, and insulin brings the blood sugar down. And insulin is not like a Pac-Man that runs around in your body and just consumes all of the sugar. It's a hormone that drives the sugar into the muscles. And in your muscles, you could store like 500 grams of glucose or glycogen, concentrated glucose, and then that sugar is burned. Your muscles are the primary site of glucose disposal. That's where, that's how you control your blood sugars, with your muscles. Insulin resistance in the muscles, of course, they stop listening to insulin. So insulin doesn't shove the sugar into the muscles. So your blood sugar stays elevated, and that sugar needs to be sent somewhere else. It gets sent to your kidneys, your nerves, your blood vessels, your eyes. So as you develop diabetes, you get nerve damage. So you get neuropathy, you get eye damage, glaucoma, macular degeneration, mesangial cell damage in your kidneys. So you get on dialysis, endothelial dysfunction. So your blood vessels are totally destroyed, and you have cardiovascular disease and Alzheimer's and dementia, type 3 diabetes. And so the reason why that damage occurs is because your muscles aren't utilizing the sugar and so they're not burning the sugar, and everything else has to. And sugar is incredibly toxic to like almost every cell in your body. There's very few glucose obligatory organs, and so everything just is damaged in the effort to control your blood sugar. And then insulin resistance starts to develop in the liver, and so your liver is constantly spewing out sugar while you're still eating. Then the pancreas can't keep up. There's no amount of insulin that it could make to keep up, so then you need medication, metformin, rapid insulin, SGLT2 inhibitors. You need to get put on drugs to be able to control the blood sugar. And so this whole cascade begins in the muscle. The muscles are the most important part of your body to keep happy and healthy, no matter what. If we want to be able to heal any chronic disease, heal from any chronic disease, or prevent any chronic disease, that begins in the muscle. I know I'm repeating myself, but I am for a reason. It's important. But yeah, the Labrador Tea um, simply just increases insulin sensitivity in the muscles, allowing for more GLUT4 transporters to draw the sugar into the muscle, and the mechanisms to be able to burn the sugar, to be able to utilize the sugar for energy. And that's what you see when people take this as medicine. We'll go into a healthcare center and we'll hijack the diabetes program for the entire week. Day one, we're slamming Labrador Tea. So you get diabetics coming in who their fasting insulin, their fasting blood glucose is 12, 15, some of them even 18. Food that they eat, it throws them into their glucometer can't even read it, because glucometers are only able to read to like 30, 33, 35. After that, it just says error. And so healthcare centers that we go into, half of them, they'll have a snack in the morning before lunch, and their postprandials just reads error. And that's the norm. That's normal for them because their diabetes is uncontrolled. So we go in there, make some Labrador tea, like, hey, this is on everybody's stove in this entire Dio region, like throughout their entire life, engaging with it every single day, like coffee, just drinking cup after cup throughout the day. So let's spend the day and let's have one cup together, have lunch. And we'll have lunch, and we'll get their fasting glucose, and they come in, we'll have some Labrador tea, and then we'll have lunch, and then we'll check their postprandials, and they've dropped to, like, generally almost everyone that we've done this with, probably thousands by now, is below 10. So they walk out of that room in the afternoon very, very close to the normal range, spending the week with us, engaging with Labrador Tea on a regular basis. At the end of the week, they're clinically don't have diabetes. And then in 3 months of continually engaging in it, their get their A1Cs again, and the actual diagnosis is removed for those who adhere to the protocol, which is just having Labrador tea on the stove and constantly engaging with it. So this is, this is the medicine that was so colloquial. And you know what's funny? Like, what removed this medicine from our stovetops is red rose and Tetley started to be like, you're a real baller if you had red rose in your house. Like, oh, this guy's got real lots of money. He's got tea, red rose. And then you're looking down on people like, oh, still crawling around in the swamp picking your tea. Oh, I got mine. And then everybody has red rose now, or Tetley, and stopped Labrador tea. So uh, on top of the opportunity for um, colonial conquest of indigenous knowledge, red rose ended up probably being one of the main contributors to removing medicine from our stovetops, this medicine in particular. And it was real awesome. In all of our engagement with all the different types of communities that we go to, just the effect that this one plant has in reducing in encouraging our ability to heal from chronic disease, or being able to prevent or lower our risk of developing chronic disease in and throughout the aging process, because it gives our muscles everything they need to be constantly utilizing or absorbing and utilizing energy, and then to be strong, to be able to engage in resistance exercise or work. And so this was like everyday tea, but we reintroduced this one tea and look at the effect that it has on people's lives. It's really, really incredible what it's able to do. And so that's I can't sing its praises enough. This is a really important medicine, and if you really want to feel um um how powerful kind of like Nishnabemshkik can be, just put this on your stovetop, see what happens. Especially if you're diabetic, uh you're gonna freak out. uh, it's super fun. But and it's like it's one of the best tasting teas like ever. We certainly have it on a regular basis here. It's really, really beautiful, and it's an evergreen too. So like you could pick it in the middle of winter, in the middle of summer, like it doesn't matter. It's always going to be there, and it's always going to be amazing. And so some of the other ones that I wanted to share with you today is you know uh, sort of accomplishing another tier where we would look at medicine that um, we would engage with just because it tasted good, but also understanding and making sure that our kids understand what part of your body that this will provide therapy to in the event that you would ever need it. So this is Gabaage Mish. Gabaage Mish is sweet fern, and its Latin name is Comptonia peregrina. And this is one of those teas that we would have like on a not every single day, but it's a really amazing tea to engage with, to be able to drink. It has like a really nice sort of mild cinnamon type of flavor, and the seed actually has a really strong cinnamon flavor, so like has a place in our culinary art as well, which we'll be able to talk about in a second. But yeah, the sweet fern is like a really, really incredible medicine. And this is what we would look to as a Nogashin Shkikke, intestine medicine. This is medicine to help with any problem inside of our intestines. So most people recognize it as being able to help with diarrhea, constipation, and things like that. Like constipation, as in like the severe hormonal imbalance, like gastrin issues and inability for the colon to reabsorb water. Not like constipation because you don't drink water, but the real hormonal imbalance. But then as well, like diarrhea, really common to use this for. Like I said, really important for us to continuously keep infections at bay. So this was super important, being able to prevent the and treat the diarrhea being really toxic to, or not toxic, sorry, causing bacteria that's known to infect the intestines and cause diarrhea. Those bacteria become very hydrophobic when they're exposed to different alpha humulene and different chemicals inside of the sweet fern, beta caryophyllene. Those bacteria and fungus and protozoa become hydrophobic, so they get flushed out, and then the source of the diarrhea is removed. Whereas, like, even that, when we go to the physician, there's not really much that we could do other than what they can do other than antibiotics or stool hardeners or softeners, kind of like one or the other. Whereas Nishnabemskike kind of like gets at the real root of the issue. But even in the sense of like when we use this medicine for like inflammatory bowel disease, and I really like to try to catch it when people are saying like, oh, I have IBS, like irritable bowel syndrome, that will always um, graduate to inflammatory bowel disease. Those are the beginning stages of it, and that's when it really needs to be taken care of. So this was an everyday tea that we engaged, not an everyday tea, sorry. This was a tea that we engaged with on a regular basis because it's delicious, but it also supports this part of your body. Now, when you engage with it that way, it's like, it's really, really crazy, where you can have people who have inflammatory bowel disease or have had inflammatory bowel disease for decades, and what this is able to do to be able to help with those. So like maybe I could just say super fast, like inflammatory bowel disease is driven by um, uh, um, gut permeability, so intestinal permeability. That means bacteria are able to get out inside of your body, and when they get from outside of your body, which is inside of your intestines, into inside of your body, which is because your digestive system is outside of your body. But when they get inside of your body, then there's a massive inflammatory response and a massive immune response. You have 200 different species of bacteria flooding out into your body. Your immune system has a lot of learning to do, and it takes a long time to recover. But the source of it is because the bacteria are coming through your intestine, and they're coming through your intestine because of so many different things. But the main reason, I mean, we could get all caught up in the details. We'll say gluten, we'll say grains, and like whatever. But the real problem is because our intestines are full of bacteria, trillions and trillions of bacteria, more bacterial cells in your intestine than human cells that make up your entire body, and they need to eat, and they eat butyrate. They're all butyrate loving bacteria. So butyrate, which is a broken down substrate for the bacteria, broken down from ketone bodies like beta hydroxybutyrate. So produced only when you're fasting or when your carbohydrates are severely restricted, which not a lot of us are hungry anymore, or restricting our carbohydrates. Canada and the US averages like 450 grams of carbohydrates a day. That's not running on a deficit. So we're not making ketones. So the bacteria aren't happy because they don't get that butyrate. And so they only eat two things after that. They eat fiber from the food that you eat, or mucin, which is a sealant that seals your intestines, a barrier between your intestines and in your body. That sealant is made up of an amino acid called glutamine, and that's bacteria's favorite food. But if you're having enough fiber, which ends up needing to be a lot of fiber to keep those bacteria healthy, there's a little bit of ketones would keep those bacteria happy. Now you need a lot of fiber, but we don't eat a lot of fiber anymore. So the bacteria are left to just eat the mucin, and when they eat through the mucin, they essentially just get out into your body. So a lot of the research is looking at not the um, separation or the junks in between the epithelial cells as being the issue, as much as being glutamine production in the intestines. And what stops glutamine production? Because glutamine is an endogenous amino acid. Your body can make it on its own, except when you're stressed. When you're stressed, you're not making glutamine. So the bacteria just eat through it and get in your body. Whereas if you're not stressed, get some Zen throughout the day, you'll be able to replenish that. But we're not. We live in Toronto. We got to drive in Ottawa. We have stoplights and cops waiting everywhere, and deadlines and bosses and kids and dogs and puppies and stuff. So it's like everything's stressful. Plus we're renting, and it's like, oh my god. And so we're not making glutamine, so the bacteria are able to eat through it all, get out into your body, cause this massive immune response, massive inflammatory response, that ends up becoming autoimmune, and ends up having to deal with ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease. And actually, this issue, one of the reasons why I really wanted to spend enough time to talk about this one, is because inflammatory bowel disease is it's pretty freaky right now. Looking at like epidemiology in Canada and the US and throughout Europe, it's actually amazing how, like 15 years ago, your doctor would have to research for 25 minutes to be able to understand what Crohn's disease was. Now I bet everybody listening to us knows multiple people who actually have Crohn's disease, so it's super common now. What is driving this? So this medicine, really simply put, beta caryophyllene is a cannabinoid inside of these leaves that um, change your body, so that it's programmed so that when you're stressed to no longer produce glutamine, to now, even when you're stressed in the presence of adrenaline and cortisol, your body's always going to be making glutamine, and especially in and for the intestines. So they're all sealed back up. And when they're sealed back up, the source of the infection is gone, and your immune system just has to deal with the residual sort of what's in your body at that moment. Once that's done, the infection is cleared and the intestines are back to their normal length and absorbing nutrients again. You could start gaining weight and absorbing vitamin B and feeling what energy feels like in a normal person. Which, if you have inflammatory bowel disease, you have no idea, because vitamin B, all of them are absorbed in your large intestine. So if that thing's messed up, you got no vitamin B, you got no energy. So you're running on E your whole life, or as long as you've been developing the disease. So that's always really nice to see. Anyways, the amount of inflammation that's required to be able to control the amount of bacteria coming into your body is so much that it affects every other part. So there's comorbidities associated with inflammatory bowel disease as well, like you'll develop enteropathic arthritis, which is not really arthritis. It's just so much inflammation, it starts affecting all the joints in your body. Inflammation coming from your gut being one of the primary drivers of anxiety and depression. And our ability to control inflammation coming out of our intestines has the most massive effect on our mental health and well-being, than the actual medicine for your mental health itself. Like our leaves from Wicca, um, Acorus calamus americanus. We use these leaves, taste like lemongrass, and this is what we use to actually help with anxiety and depression, which it works very well for, improving parasympathetic action, allowing us to rest and digest and sleep and lower our heart rate and breathe through our nose and take some deep breaths, meditate a while. It's really amazing the way that this medicine works. It's beyond the scope of this presentation now, but we actually have medicine for mental health and things like anxiety and depression. But like, just getting to the real root of what's causing some of these problems, it's not really that we need to seek out a medicine that encourages or um, influences parasympathetic action, but we just need to get rid of all the inflammation coming from our guts. And so it's really fun trying to figure out what's actually the problem and get at it. And so the two medicines that I shared today, the sweet fern and the Labrador tea, probably some of the most amazing medicines that I could have probably ever taken this short time to be able to share. But and to really sort of give us the ability to understand the genius of Anishinaabe, how these plants do exactly what they're supposed to do, getting at the root of issues, giving us the ability to prevent the onset of chronic disease as late and as long into our lives as possible, and giving us the ability to be strong throughout that whole aging process. Really, really important stuff. And then you look at that great partnership too between like Western science and the health sciences and pharmaceutical inputs, being masters at at giving us the ability to live with chronic disease as long as possible and as comfortably as possible. So that combination of the two, preventing the onset of chronic disease that will kill us eventually, as late and as long as possible, and then insert health sciences, giving us the ability to live with those even longer. So it's really fun thinking about all these things. I did kind of, I'm gonna just run over just a little bit because I wanted to share with you guys medicine's role in um, uh, our food, which is I think where it played the a major role. Like I said, I think that it's our diet and lifestyle that was responsible for preventing chronic disease the way that it is. But the importance of retaining the gift of our medicines being super important. So, you know, we remember that for today. But I think we're wrongfully and maybe even harmfully over consuming plant medicine when the real roots and problems are in our lifestyle. So adjusting those, then seeking out therapy. I've been finding out more and more every single day that more often than not, we don't even really need medicine. We need to uh, we just need to tweak some other things. Anyways, I think our biggest exposure to medicinal plants is in our food. Like this one here, we have Gawkamish, northern prickly ash, or Xanthoxylum americanus. Xanthoxylum is in the same family as Szechuan peppers. So we have an Anishinaabe Szechuan peppers, which taste kind of like Szechuan peppers, but I'd hate to yeah, I mean everybody knows I'm biased when I say this, but I think they're better. Like it's so good. It's the furthest northern growing citrus tree in the world. These peelings off of the seeds taste just like a really uh not bitter orange peel. The leaves smell just like the rind of a lime, and so does the bark. And so all of these this kind of medicine is used for your mouth, for your teeth, for teething, especially for teething babies. Or I had one organization bring on a brand new dentistry wing into their healthcare center, and the dental hygienist just had wisdom teeth removed. And so her cheek was just massive and green, and she's been in pain for a week and only eating smoothies. And I just ran up to her and I said, put this in your lip. Gave her these seeds. Put this in your lip. She was like, what? Who are you? But she can't even barely talk. And then everybody just peer pressured her, do it, listen to him. And she put this in her lip, and there's a saponin here that's absorbed sublingually. So in 5-10 minutes, it's in her blood and doing what it's supposed to do into her blood and then into her mouth, where it draws calcium from every sensory neuron in your gums, removing pain, and as well as activating NRF2, like a major antioxidant and anti-inflammatory pathway inside of your body. So pulling all that inflammation out of her body. And we watched throughout the whole day, her cheek really went down in swelling, not in color. I mean, the damage was done, but the size of her cheek really lowered. And in 15 minutes after putting this inside of her lips, she was eating a sandwich. Because she just ran away and got a sandwich. And then she came back and she was like, what the heck was in that seed? Because she was on Oxycontin and it wasn't touching the pain until she put this in her mouth. And she was like, what the heck is this? And it was super, super fun. And I actually gave it that jar to that organization, and they actually used that for almost 8 months. They didn't have to use any opiates. They weren't prescribing any opiates. They give a little package of these seeds, and so think of impact that plants can have on our communities. It's really, really incredible. But this one, being Szechuan peppers, we use it in our cooking. One of the things that it makes you do is salivate like crazy. The only reason why like one of the reasons why you salivate when you smell good food is because in order to taste that food, your mouth needs to be wet. Like if you can't taste, if you can't taste, or if you have bad taste, you have a dry mouth. This is why smokers can't taste food very well, because their mouth is always dry. And so this really makes your mouth water. Like in 5 minutes you're like you can't even hold it all in, you just can't wait to eat. And so it enhances the flavor of every dish that you put it in, and as well as being like a really incredible therapy for your mouth, being antibacterial to the only three types of bad bacteria that can accumulate in your mouth and cause an infection, getting rid of those, and as well as, you know, that really strong anti-inflammatory action and pain relieving qualities, those are all transmitted via your food. And so I think, you know, this is probably one of the largest ways that we would expose ourselves to plant medicine. The powers of plant medicine is getting these cinnamon tasting seeds, and we have roots that taste like cloves. We have licorice, and we have all of these different tastes and flavors are, you know, indigenous to this part of the world as well, and are used in our culinary arts. The foods that we would make are absolutely incredible when you learn how to cook with some of our plants. Now, of course, that plant knowledge has been effectively removed. Um, uh, but uh, uh, but yeah, I mean, that being one of the biggest problems, the biggest barriers in us accessing what our food tasted like historically, traditionally, all, you know, tasting pretty good. So I wanted to just be able to share sort of everyday teas, and then engaging in different medicines as a form of therapy, but kind of mostly just enjoying their taste. And then also understanding that we have like 180 different species of medicine that we use. Um, that's a lot of different tastes that your body can crave, different a repertoire of therapeutic cravings that your body can have and engage with throughout your life. That's really amazing to see my daughter kind of crave some really weird teas, like, you haven't made this in a while, can you make that? It's like, it's not even a really good tasting tea. Why do you want that? It's like her body just knows, oh, maybe something's a little bit off. I need a little bit of help here. Now that we're raising her with that repertoire, her body knows what to ask for. If you don't have that exposure, your body doesn't know how to ask for it. Just like with your food, you're deficient in different vitamins and minerals, you will crave different types of foods. Your body will look at all of the foods that you eat and say, hey, where do I get the most magnesium? Chocolate, give me chocolate now, and you have a chocolate craving. um, the same should be for medicine. You know, if your body had the ability to understand where it can achieve different types of therapy, to then be able to crave it and say, I need that. But I wanted to show real quick before I bust into some questions. I'd love to go over as much as I can, but one of the things that we do as our primary exposure to plant medicine is cook it all together. So we harvest medicine for a couple weeks. Um, that year we harvested 119 different species of plants, put it all in a big pot, cooked it for 29 and a half days, strained it and squashed it in a cider press, brought it inside. And the, you know, the medicinal potential of every single plant is in the oil of that plant. So when you make tea, you're just making a mixture of oil from the plant and water. So what we do is we spend 29 and a half days making this pot of tea, and then evaporating all of the water. And it goes lower and lower and lower and lower. Oh, crooked picture. Until all of the water is ultimately gone, and we're left with escogum medec, which is a reduction of all of the oil of all of the plants that we use as medicine from this entire georegion that the whole world gestures to accessing medicine now. and and we have a reduction of all of that medicinal potential, this process being something that families would engage in on a regular basis for their entire lives. and having a teaspoon a day, being able to engage in the therapeutic potential of every single medicinal plant from Manitoulin, from the Great Lakes, that the whole world looks to accessing healthcare now. And we would do this every single day for our whole lives. And so I wanted to be able to share like everyday teas, therapy, or like, but just having good tasting plants here and there in the form of tea, and then cooking, medicinal use in our culinary lives, probably being one of the most important, uh, or one of the most important, yeah. And then the reduction of all of the medicinal potential. And so yeah, maybe just right there, I just kind of wanted to spend a little bit of time with you, just to be able to give you the ability to understand what Nishnabem Shkike looks like, science's role within this, and sort of open your eyes, when we're outside, to looking at all these different plants. It's really funny. One of my favorite games is I'll get Facebook messages, people like, "What's this plant?" and their picture kind of looks like every Sasquatch picture, like taken real blurry, and they're like, "What's this?" And then I get to tell them what it is, what drug has been created from that to be able to help us in our lives today, like in Western medicine. And that opportunity to then say, instead of engaging in that drug, we have the opportunity to go right to the source of where that comes from, the opportunity to accomplish more than what the drug was able to do, because they are limited to profit. The plant it's not limited, it's survival for that plant. So it's kind of fun exposing some of these ideas, giving us the ability to go outside and kind of look at everything like, who are you? I wonder what your value is. And learning how to engage in a reciprocal relationship with, every one of those plants. That's what I spend most of my time kind of working with different communities, that relationship aspect, how to engage in a reciprocal relationship with plants and beyond sustainable approaches to taking care of medicine. Um, but yeah, wow, Rick, I keep ranting all day. But I wanted to be able to make sure that I answer some questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Joe. That was an amazing presentation. We have a lot of very positive comments. If you have any questions for Joe, feel free to enter them into the Q&A. Um, our first question is, I have a garden and getting ready to start this year's planting. Are there any indigenous medicines I could grow in my backyard? This person is in the West Coast, Washington State.
In Washington, sweet. Um, um, Well, yeah, you know what? I mean, I was speaking pretty specifically to plants that are indigenous to the Great Lakes region. But there are a lot of plants that are in this region, that are native to this region, that grow in other parts of the world. Um, so, um, but in Washington, maybe too unfamiliar to even comment on that. What I want to say though is to be in consultation with medicinal knowledge holders, plant knowledge holders from your region, and engaging in that conversation with them, because there are plants that I could suggest that are plants that I like, but there are some that might be more integral, specific to that geo region, that part of the world. And so I would establish and maintain that relationship with knowledge holders in the whatever indigenous communities that are around you, and sort of facilitate what you would be putting in your garden then. There's a lot of bad things you could put in your garden. I work with a lot of groups in Ontario, landscaping and design companies who are changing their repertoire of plants that they will put into people's yards to just indigenous plants. And especially with my help incorporating medicinal plants into that whole process as well. And it's super, super cool what some of these groups have been able to come up with, just understanding how plant medicine is used, and getting that indigenous perspective and saying, oh, let's do it, get real solid gardens. And I'm real sad that I'm renting, because all my buddies all over the place are planting all kinds of real solid medicine in their yard, and I'm all left out because I'm renting, and I don't want to, well, I don't want to put a whole bunch of work in and then somebody's just going to till it all for grass when we move out. So I'm kind of like at an impasse there. But we certainly work with the plant communities that we harvest from it locally and expanding those patches. So kind of gardening all over the place still. But yeah, I guess that's what I want to say, is kind of focusing um, on your area and seeking out that knowledge there. But I really like bee balm or wild bergamot, Monarda fistulosa, and the cardinal lobelia, or is it right here? Cardinal lobelia. These are two really, really amazing plants, like ecologically. Um, Sorry, this one is Lobelia cardinalis. But yeah, I really like focusing on these because they're really important ecologically, medicinally as well. But yeah, that's super fun. I would get that context from your area first, though. Um, uh, but yeah, see the other one here. For someone trying to learn about edible and medicinal plants, how do you distinguish between fact and myths when it comes to claims about the properties of plants? Oh, it's one of my favorite jobs. What, like, fact and fable is like, I use science as my proxy to be able to distinguish between the two, um, and or my metric. And to the point where when my grandma would speak, everything that she said, I'm not going to believe until I see it. So it was through experience that I established, my understanding, but reinforced those experiences with science, and understanding research that has been done, and sort of, yeah, spending my time doing that. That's a pretty good, process. I mean, I was pretty, I don't know how to say, unethical in my experiential days. By university standards anyway, it's unethical. But I was reuniting people with their medicine, and that's all I was doing. But the university tells me that this is unethical. I can't do this. I have to go through a authorized randomized controlled trial process. And I was like, oh, go through the ethics board, and it won't pass ethics, giving a bunch of people a bunch of plants and just seeing what happens. Like I did for like 6 years. But it was fun, just, yeah, reuniting people with their medicine, and they knew what to do with it. They just didn't have the ability to go and find it anymore. Too busy with work, mobility issues, even. But yeah, the my main uh process to navigate fact and fiction is definitely with science. It's got to be there to back it up. So if I don't not have experience with these yet, I try to be as diligent as I can in the uh, keeping on top of the literature, if there's anything to support it. Most plants have been through the whole rigmarole of literature, so this research is out there for sure. um But I saw another one here. Nicole. Oh, Nicole. Can you explain to us how to harvest in a responsible and sustainable way? Yeah, real fast. um, yeah. So how to harvest in a sustainable and responsible way. I got yeah. Well, every plant is going to be different. I mean, one thing that I could say super fast right now, really going over our time limit, but where the heck are these pictures? Oh, there we go. So most of the medicinal plant species in our area rely on a relationship between ants, bears, uh, mice, and mice predators like owls and snakes. So what happens really fast is ants will collect seeds. Birds digest and destroy seeds. So do chipmunks and squirrels and mice. They digest and destroy seeds. Ants will actually prepare seeds for germination. So every seed has an eliasome on the outside that is a crust that prevents the seed from germinating. Ants will see that eliasome, that crust, as a source of food, being nutritionally complete for most ants. So they collect them like crazy and they bring them home and they store them while they eat all of the eliasome, essentially preparing the seed for germination. And then they store those seeds that inside of a midden in a big cavern next to their larvae, because it's too much work to throw the seeds out through the top of the nest. So they just store it inside, and they store it beside their larvae, which are very nutritious and very calorically dense. So bears will dig out the larvae, essentially digging out all of the seeds and consuming, eating all of the seeds from the plants, all of those medicinal seeds. And the bear's digestive system sucks. Like they hardly absorb anything but energy from plants, and so all of the medicinal seeds go through the bear unharmed, which is one of the reasons why bears is so significant to medicinal culture and in the Schnabe. So then you get this poo poo that's full of medicinal seeds that the bear has collected. And mice, Wabganoji Suck, are going to look at all those seeds and say, hey, this bear is not even eating those. Look at all this food sitting here. And it'll grab all of this and it'll bury them a centimeter to a centimeter and a half deep throughout the whole forest floor. And his job is to eat those seeds throughout the winter. That's his buffet table that he's storing throughout all this network of trails underneath the leaf litter. Um, and so they are essentially planting all of our medicine, but like I said, they digest them and destroy them. So um, uh, so that sucks. But lucky for us, we have people or beings that help protect our medicine, like owls. One family of barred owls can eat almost 30,000 mice a year. So they remove that mouse. All of that food that mouse has planted doesn't get eaten, and it germinates and it turns into our medicine. So there are roles and responsibilities that we have when it comes to even just walking through the forest. Like every time you see an owl, don't even look at it. Don't look at it and walk away. Don't bother it, because its role is incredibly important. Its job is to remove that mouse, plant all of our medicine. If you bother that owl and you impede on its ability to remove the mouse, you're ruining everybody's ability to live in this part of the world, killing everybody. So don't do that. So this whole like owls are the harbingers of death, kind of like idea, this is one of the places where it comes from, its role in protecting our medicine. If you impede on that, you're removing our access to medicine, which will ultimately kill us all. So same with snakes. When you see snakes, their job is to remove the mouse as well. So don't bother them. And so it could be, it's as simple as understanding your role within this ecosystem, and living, subscribing to that, and living to it to every degree, I guess. But it's also really, really complex. Starting with the ants, there's parts of our culture, parts of our tradition that will force you to engage and aid in this process every step of the way. Like from, well, it's beyond the scope of this presentation, but there's a lot that we could learn by understanding each of these creatures' role within the system, and how important they are to this whole knowledge base and this whole ecosystem. Um, so yeah. I don't want to go too long, but I mean, I do. I want to go forever.
That's okay. Maybe you can just address the last question of how people can follow your work and how they can find you, and then we can end it there.
Oh yeah. Okay. So yeah, I mean, this is my my job now, is teaching about medicine. Um and I do that through mainly through our Facebook page called Creators Garden. I'll put it all in here for you guys. We have our YouTube channel that we kind of throw stuff up on here and there, all of which you get on our Facebook page, anyways. But we have a Patreon where we actually upload quite a bit to that Patreon. So there's lots of stuff there. What do you call them? Podcasts, audio files for a lot of our different presentations. Um, uh, I'm just trying to get it into the chat here. I don't know what's happening. Just give me a second. Okay. Maybe it won't even work. Oh, you'll be able to get everything on our Facebook page anyway. Just Facebook in Creators Garden, or searching that in Patreon. You'll be able to have access to everything. Yeah, I can't get it into the chat. I can't even type anything. It's so laggy. Oh well. Yeah, just Facebook us, Creators Garden. That's where we do everything.
I think Amber got it up. Can you see that, Joe? Is that correct? Just to confirm.
Yeah, well, I'll see it in a second. I can't scroll down. Oh yeah, there it is.
That's
Yeah.
correct.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Follow that. Like it up. Check everything out. Share all kinds of cool stuff. She got a bunch of really cool stuff. Spring plants coming up. That's gonna be super exciting.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thanks so much for your time today, Joe. This is really great. And thanks for everyone who joined us today. And be sure to check out our next speakers in this series next Saturday and the Saturday after that. And yeah, we will end it here. Bye, everyone.
Sweet. Naha Bama.